We talked to Jena Doyle about Midsummer, and now she's back to join us for Samhain. The timing has worked out absolutely perfect. We follow our lovely little unicorn polycule. We got four altogether: Lex, Carter, Miri, and Ivy. And she's shaking some stuff up in book two. I definitely ended with a lot more questions, but so much love and appreciation and enjoyment. As I mentioned, this is a part two, so I recommend watching the first part. And if you know me, you know this is nothing but spoilers. So read the book, then come listen to the conversation. I hope you enjoy. Welcome to Busy Reading Romantasy, a video podcast that discusses books that merge elements of romance and fantasy while occasionally exploring other genres. We get to escape our world and dive deep into themes of good versus evil, power dynamics, and all of the delicious taboo topics. Curiosity and open-mindedness are a must. That being said, this is a podcast for mature audiences only and will contain spoilers. Your mental health matters, so be sure to check the trigger warnings of each book to decide if this is the right episode for you to listen to. Now, let's get into today's episode. We've been very busy bees lately, going to all the book conventions. What have you been up to?
I just got back from Spellbound in the Valley, which was amazing. On top of all that, just continuing to write. I have another book coming out in November, and then I've got a short coming out in December. So just back to back. They are all part of my, so the book in November is a new series for me. It's The Royal Harlots. It's very witchy, very like supernatural meets Vampire Diaries meets The Craft.
Yeah.
And then the short in November or December is from my Royal Bastards Motorcycle Club. So that will be werewolves and heats and holidays and fun stuff like that.
Oh my goodness, that is fun. I just went to Romantasy Book Con and it was fun. There was slightly more, I guess, holiday vibe than I remember there being last year. And I'm like, this is so fun. I love Christmas. So it's always fun when you get those like holiday cozy, because we down here in Florida, we don't get the actual, like, it's always warm on Christmas here, which is fine. I'm not complaining, but I do like those, like, I like the idea of the cozy, cuddle up, nice fireplace vibes, but
it's a whole aesthetic. Those are my favorite days, is like staying inside with the snow and the hot cocoa, and the world is just so peaceful when it snows. My husband and I were talking about possibly even moving to Florida, because he flies for a living and one of the bases is in Miami, and that would be the thing that I miss the most, is the seasons, the snow, the quiet, the cold. I love it all.
That is very fair. I do have to remind myself that it's still like winter, and I love living like seasonally and like kind of cyclically, and like take this time to rest. So I'm like, I have 2 more weeks of craziness, and then I'm like, we're relaxing, we're baking cookies, we're laying on the couch and reading, and like still relax. It's winter.
Yes, we should be hibernating. We should not be forcing ourselves to continue our 9-to-5s.
Exactly.
Of course, when I tell my boss that, she's just like, no.
I know. And it's so funny, because then you get the New Year's and then everyone's like, let's go. And I'm like, it's January. It's still winter.
We need to ease into this.
Yeah. Spring hasn't started yet. Shh.
Exactly.
Yeah. Speaking of all the holidays, Halloween is coming up. Do you have any plans, anything going on?
So my family and I like to go to our graves of our beloved dead, and we'll clean their graves and just get rid of any debris, any clutter. I live in the woods, so we don't get very many trick-or-treaters. So we usually will just do a very intimate Samhain ritual here at the house, and then go clean graves, and that gives me like a little sense of peace and connection to my ancestors.
That is nice. Yeah, that sounds great.
What about you?
We're probably just gonna go out.
Yeah. That'll still
Um,
be fun.
yeah, absolutely. I'm kind of on the after this last crazy weekend, I'm kind of like maybe we could just relax and like watch a spooky movie or something. So we'll see. We'll see
Mhm.
what ends up happening if I want to brave the craziness. But I do love to dance, so I'm not ever opposed to going out either.
Yeah.
Um, and then, but right after that, the main feature of the weekend is November for us is our Ren Fair season. So um,
Mm.
we're planning to go opening weekend, so I'm very excited for that.
Oh, that'll be so much fun. It just got done being Ren Fair season here
Oh,
in this
yeah.
area. I wasn't able to go this year, but I usually try to make at least one appearance.
Oh, yeah.
So I'll have to catch it next year.
Yes. I am very excited. Got the outfits, of course, and
I was going
it's
to ask, do
always
you
fun.
dress up? Because that's the only way to do it. You have
For
to dress up.
sure.
Yeah.
For sure. This year, actually, I have a new outfit in the mix. I have like a couple basics of like corsets and skirts that I can switch up, usually like piratey look. That's a great place to start. And then I have some new pieces to add into this year. So I'm very excited.
How fun. Yeah, that's usually my go-to costume too, is the pirate. It's a little bit more
Yeah.
comfortable, I feel like, than being weighted down with dresses and all the
Yes.
linen.
Yep, exactly. Fun stuff. But speaking of Samhain, that's what we're
Ooh,
here to
there
discuss
it
today.
is.
Ah,
Yay.
these are so gorgeous. Thank you again
Of
for these.
course. Yeah, it was so wonderful to meet you in person. We got to meet at Smut Lovers, which is another great
Yes.
signing in
Mhm.
Orlando every year.
Yes, that was so exciting. It's always so great, and I think that's one of the perks of having this as a project is that I get to talk to amazing people, and then when we get to meet in real life, I'm like, oh my
Ah,
gosh.
it's
Mhm.
you.
Yeah,
It's you.
it's so fun. So, we have filmed an episode before, that was Midsummer. That's book 1, so ideally, pause here, go watch that one, then you can come catch up, or be chaotic and just jump in here, you'll figure it out and be able to follow along. But, before we kind of hop into this, can you just give us a little kind of refresher on where Midsummer ends and then the start of Samhain?
Sure. Yeah. So at the end of Midsummer, we are with Lex and Ivy. Carter and Miri have gone off to California together. Lex and Ivy have sort of reluctantly decided to continue along with this fake proposal, this PR stunt. And at the very end of Midsummer, we find out that Lex and Ivy both have developed some sort of secret power. So they've come back from Ireland with a little fairy gift. And Ivy is able to get into people's heads and sort of read people's minds. And Lex is able to tell when somebody is lying. And that's where it ends. We cut back. So, in the prologue of Midsummer, we have the opening to the wedding. And at the very end of Midsummer, we cut back to that wedding and Ivy sort of leading this charge to essentially burn it all down. She knows now what she needs to do,
Mhm.
and that's where it ends. Ooh, cliffhanger! Right,
Oh,
read
yeah.
book 2.
Yeah, and so even getting into Samhain, it starts where, from Carter's point of view, so definitely wanna talk about that, getting into Carter and Miri in this
Mhm.
book, but he's essentially struggling watching the marriage go down, and then we pop back in time and then kind of follow Carter and Miri's journey after the separation. What was it like for you writing from their POV, this book around compared to Ivy and Lex in book 1?
That's a great question. Lex and Ivy came to me sort of naturally, and I knew that I wanted to start the story with them. But I also knew that I wanted to give Carter and Miri a voice. When I first wrote Midsummer, I wrote the first, I wrote so many drafts. I wrote one draft that was just Ivy's point of view, and then I was really missing Lex. And then I wrote a draft where I alternated between all 4 points of view, and I thought that was a little too chaotic and cluttered. And so I thought, okay, I'll do 4 books, and the first one will just be 2, and then the second one will just be 2. Getting into their heads, I will say that Carter was a little bit easier than Miri was. Carter is as a reader, as sort of a normal person just living in the world, he is our portal into this life because he is just a normal person. He would even describe himself as a nobody from Chicago. Grew up, child of divorced parents, eldest son of 4 kids, the rest of them all girls. So he is sort of burdened with this sense of responsibility for all of the people around him. He's my little cinnamon roll. He's so sweet, and he just wants everybody to just be happy, while also recognizing that life is not always fair. And I think for the other 3 characters, they've grown up in this world of wealth and privilege and all the responsibility that comes with that, including, having an arranged marriage to somebody that you don't particularly like. For Miri, I mean, I've never been a princess, and so it was difficult to sort of see things from her point of view.
Right.
And particularly, she's British, and so it was hard to, I listened to a lot of Bridgerton. I listened to a lot of other, particularly The Crown was very popular when I was writing this. And so listening to that dialect just to be able to pick up on some of that and get into her head. But I also knew what their overall character arcs were going to be. And so I wanted to make sure that I capitalized on that as much as possible. I feel like in the first book, our relationships really sort of hinged on Lex and Ivy. We had Carter, who had a relationship with both of them, and we had Miri, who had a relationship with both of them. We didn't really get to see too much of Carter and Miri together. Or even really understand how their relationship, those 2 together, would have developed, which is why, as you mentioned at the start of Samhain, we go back to when they were in California. And I really wanted to give them some space to explore what this friendship means between the 2 of them. It really is, at least at the beginning, a friendship sort of built on this joint heartbreak that they're experiencing at the loss of Ivy and Lex.
Yeah. And it really made me reflect on my journey as a reader, because had you asked me a few years ago, I was very adamant of like, I just want one POV. I want my main character. I don't want anybody else. I don't care about anyone else. And this one, I love this book, getting to know them better. And like you said, Carter being such the sweet, like cinnamon roll, and even getting to know Miri a little bit better as well, because she is, there's a level of her that's so guarded, and to get to know kind of what she's facing as well, which she has definitely some interesting stuff going on where you're like, oh. I thought it was really sweet in the beginning when we're getting more of Carter's backstory as well, around his parents and caring for the siblings. And just there's that bit that you wrote about him experiencing first, and how that was so like sweet and special to him. For me, that's like the prologue, the little kind of when you get the voiceover at the beginning of a movie, like
Yes,
that perfect moment, where it's like explaining everything. It was really fun to get to know them better.
As Carter would say, he's a sentimental shit. Like, so in touch with his emotions, for better or for worse. And he really does love a first time, as we see with, a lot of stuff that happens to him, even in that short period. But then as we progress into the events of Samhain.
Yeah, absolutely. So We get this new split where, as we've been talking about, Ivy and Lex have to go fulfill their familial duties, and now Carter and Miri end up kind of almost on a whim, being like, let's go together. You're gonna keep each other
Mhm.
company.
Yeah.
Can you talk about how their relationship starts to develop?
Sure. Yeah. So as I mentioned, they have this shared heartbreak.
Mhm,
And it is, I think up until they go to California, they had always seen each other as friends.
mhm,
And as teammates, they in college they were in theater together. They shared a lot of roles together. In Midsummer, we see them play Romeo and Juliet together, and
mhm,
so they know that they can rely on each other in that respect. And then when they're in California, I think they both were just looking for a way to escape this heartbreak that they had shared together. And
mhm,
so I needed them to complete that unicorn square, right? I
mhm,
needed them to find a way to come together romantically, sexually. And so it starts out, I think, as a way to sort of numb the pain of
mhm,
what they think happened, right? So
mhm.
at the end of Midsummer, Ivy and Lex think that Carter and Miri broke it off.
Mhm,
In a Shakespearean sort of twist, Carter and Miri think that Lex and Ivy broke it off.
mhm,
And so I think to numb each other and to numb themselves out, they sort of find this love together and realize that, hey, this has sort of been here all along. It's a way to, I think they even tell Lex and Ivy later on, it was a way to make it not hurt as
mhm,
much. But I think that might be a little bit of an understatement. I do think that Carter and Miri balance each other out in some ways. I, of all of the couples in Midsummer, I would say those two are best friends
yeah,
before anything else. And sure,
yeah,
they might have sex and they might have, these romantic attachments to Lex and Ivy. But I think for Ivy and Miri, there was always sort of
mhm,
a underlying attraction between both of them, and definitely between Lex and Carter. But
mhm,
when Carter and Miri come together, it really is a bond of friendship and a bond of mutual respect and love. And they understand each other in a way that's different than the other two because they know what it's like to be
mhm.
in love with Lex and Ivy and to be spurned by Lex and Ivy in various ways.
Yeah,
And so, in that shared understanding, they're able to find um, something that's deeper than what they have with either of the other two people.
yeah, yeah, absolutely, and that's definitely something that I want to come back to, is when the 4 of them finally reunite, there
Mhm.
is some navigating around, "Okay, we kind of all swapped and split up, and things
Yeah.
have happened. Where is everyone at now? How are they
Mhm.
dealing with jealousy and kind of those elements?" So definitely want to come back to that. But before that, Miri is the first one that notices that her power has now come in, and she can
Mhm.
grow plants. And
Yes.
then shortly soon after, Carter's power evolves, and he gets super lucky. Crazy for them to go through as a reader. I'm like, ooh, fun. What were your thoughts around kind of creating their gifts? Because it definitely makes sense with who they all are, like,
Mhm.
that's very fitting, and kind of just creating that magical element and maybe kind of the bounds of what's possible for them.
Yeah. So with Lex, he has always had a problem with people lying to him, right? And
Mm-hmm.
he can even tell when Ivy is lying because she gets flushed, and in her flush, there's
Mm-hmm.
sort of like a mark on her neck that sort of looks like an X. And so I thought it would be very fitting for him, if he was going to get a fairy gift, to be able to tell when people are lying to him, because it's just such a part of his animosity around the world. Everybody's a liar. Everybody's a sycophant. Everybody's just out to get my money. With Ivy, she is very much preoccupied with what everybody thinks about her, the public stage, as it were, what her mother thinks, what the world thinks, what her reputation is. She has to be the America's sweetheart. She has to be a good girl, and she can't step out of line. And so for her, I think it would be very fitting if she was just able to tell what anybody thinks at any time. And sometimes that even happens spontaneously, and she, doesn't want to know what somebody else is thinking, and then she just can't.
Mm-hmm.
With Miri, her solace has always been found in gardening, in planting. I think particularly in Samhain, if Miri could just throw it all away and go to her little cottage in Aberdeen and play in the garden all day, every day, that would be her goal. And so for her, being able to tap into that earth energy, I thought would be really advantageous. With Miri, I see her as sort of Persephone vibes. In order to be able to be with Lex, she has to have a foothold in that cynical mindset. She has to have a foothold in the world is crap and everybody's unfair and the world is unfair. But at the same time, she also is a woman and was raised that with certain societal expectations, particularly as a princess. And so she can't just come across being cynical all the time. And so she has this sort of, I think I liken her to the frost on a spring morning, where it's cold and bitter, but also there's new life growing. The plants are starting to bloom. So she is both death and flowers, and she is both cold and warm at the same time. And so to give her a fairy gift, I think she would need to really capitalize on that earth energy and that that groundedness. I mean, the earth can be very violent sometimes too. Earthquakes kill thousands of people all the time, and so I wanted her to be able to really resonate with that. And then with Carter, his whole thing is about not feeling like he deserves what he gets. And these three wealthy princes and princesses, by all means, are suddenly infatuated with him, right? And so they love him, and he feels like he doesn't deserve to be there, and he shouldn't be there. He's just some nobody from Chicago. And so I thought, what if he was able to just use that luck, as all four stories progress, we start to question what is fate and what is luck. And I think for Carter, a lot of that dilemma comes into play if he's lucky all the time and he just sort of falls into his happenstance and what is really meant for him versus what was given to him by the fairies. Is any of this real? So that sort of thing. So honestly, I got that idea from Deadpool 2. I think there was one character who was really Domino, who was really, really lucky. And I think I was writing in the early stages of writing Samhain and had it on in the background. And I was like little light bulb went off. And I was like, oh, that is perfect. That is absolutely the perfect fairy gift for Carter.
Yeah. And what a fun way for him to discover it as well, know, when you're gambling and then all of a sudden he's like, so I won millions in a matter of like
banned from 3 casinos in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
And then to be on his way home and meet up with a director that he knew from high school, and the director is pitching this big Game of Thrones-esque show on an HBO like sitcom, and to be offered the part, right? Like right then and there. So it just, everything keeps falling right in his lap for him.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. If you were to bestowed a fairy gift without the nasty side effects,
Oh,
what do you think you would end up getting?
oh my goodness. That is a great question. Um, Something to do with honestly, I think I would like to be able to read any language that's ever been written ever.
Ooh, okay,
Uh,
that's a good one.
yeah, I have a so I've always been very good at learning languages. Retaining
Yeah.
the information is another story, but I did really well in like French and Spanish and Italian, a
Yeah.
lot of the Romance languages. And so yeah, I think that would be my fairy gift.
Nice. I
What
like
about
that.
you?
That
That's a good question. I want to know
Yeah, I know.
yours.
As you were explaining, I was like thinking, I think mine might have to do with emotions. Even
Okay.
maybe reading them, but to a higher level, being able to influence them more to the
Ooh.
degree of like having people calm down. Like I feel like that's my safety mechanism in life to be like,
Yeah.
whoa, everyone needs to just chill out. Like if we're all calm, everyone's okay.
You must
Um,
have some Libra in your chart somewhere.
Maybe, I don't know. It's funny you say that because actually, like, I have a Capricorn stellium, which are not like
Okay.
they tend to be more like, I guess, explained as like cold-hearted, but
Yeah. It's grounded.
it's
It's
like
grounded energy is what
yeah,
that
exactly.
is.
Yes, I'm like, let's all calm down. We have things to achieve. If we're all emotional,
Yes.
there's craziness. Okay, yeah. No, I think that was fun to think about as you were explaining
Yeah.
the reasons why they were having different gifts. I am so I feel I get so invested in these books. You do a great job of painting the picture that anytime I'm hit by a time jump, I'm like, whoa, what happened? So literally in my notes, I'm like 2 years later, exclamation, question mark, exclamation. And I'm like, yeah, we had a while to like catch up in their journey. Um, but they're once again hit by the lust, and I'm like, here we go, it's happening. That kind
Yes.
of get them all together yet again. What was it like for you writing the reunion and how that all went down?
Um, so I knew that the fairy lust was going to come back to get them.
Mhm.
And I knew that we also were not going to have any reasonable explanation for it. They shrugged it off as, oh, it was the wine that we drank, and somebody must have put something in the wine, and we were
Mhm.
drugged, and all of that. And now here we are so many years later, and it's come back for them.
Mhm.
Um, one of one of the things that I like as a reader is sort of this dubious consent, and that says a lot about me. But hey, we're on a romance podcast, so I'll
Absolutely.
just be
That
honest.
is one it's one I
Yeah.
enjoy as well.
Yes. Is that you don't want to want it, but then you also kind of do want it at the same time.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to play with that a little bit. Uh,
Mhm.
I also needed a reason for them to all get back together. And it couldn't
Mhm.
be as simple as, oh, well, we miss each other, because that's for Lex and Ivy in the situation that they're in. That's not a good enough reason
Mhm.
to want to get everybody back together again. And so I sort of combined those ideas of, well, they have this uncontrollable lust, and the only way to alleviate it is if they all get back together and they
Mhm.
all have sex together. And so that was a lot of fun, actually. I one of When I was feeling out the vibes for Midsummer, just in general, one of my original images was of Carter walking into the house and seeing the girls sort of run past wearing these like flowy gowns,
Mhm.
and Lex sitting on the couch smoking a cigarette, just sort of like sprawled out with the
Mhm.
top hat, and Carter just sort of falling to his knees.
Mhm.
And so I was very happy that the characters allowed me to keep that original image.
Yes.
Thank you, characters.
Yeah.
Because it was originally, when I wrote this, I had maybe 100-page outline of all 4
Mhm.
books. And so then I, took that and expanded and expanded and expanded.
Mhm.
And this was one of the original images from that book. And
Yeah.
so it was really, when I finished typing out that scene, I just felt like like I was giddy
Yeah.
almost, because it was just a lot of fun. A lot of
Yeah.
fun to write.
Yeah, I imagine. And it is like as we had mentioned earlier when they come back and realizing like they've been through a lot without each other, so there's some stuff for them to catch up on.
Mhm.
Um eh, so also being able to break down them all being together, but then kind of going back into their kind of I want to say like original couples as well.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of reassurance and kind of checking in because at first, there's a moment when Ivy goes back to her room and because she doesn't really
Yeah.
know where everything is standing, and both it was Lex and Mary like being like, Carter, that's
That's your cue, buddy. Yeah.
go get in there. And for them to kind of reassure each other and pick up where they left off in terms of love. I think what I realized as a reader, one thing that I enjoy so much, and even talking about kind of like the dubious consent and kind of a, a dynamic of four different people and four different energies, and all trying to figure out their various relationships with each other. One thing I appreciate so much about your writing is just this outpouring and abundance of love and how tender they are with each other and how much
Mhm.
they reassure each other. I think a lot of us probably feel to some whatever degree um, love in the real world sometimes is very stressful. I find maybe I need to just stop scrolling on TikTok, but I'm I'm in a newer relationship. We're like a month
Yeah.
in, and TikTok was like picked up on that and is like, here are 5 ways to know if a man is really into you. Like, and it's
Oh,
there's
yeah.
just so much noise about all this stuff. And
Yeah.
I'm keep watching it though, because I do find it funny to just see what they're gonna say. And anyways, I'm like,
Yeah.
I think I need to cut that information out. So that just being said, I love reading a book where it's just so abundant in the way they're
Mhm.
so tender with each other and figuring things out. And even when it comes to sex, Ivy's using a strap on at one point, and the way that Carter and Lex, their dynamic, which is a lot more rough because they're like, hey,
Mm.
we can't do that with the girls.
Yeah.
Just like there's no question behind that, but just all of the applause because it's just
Oh.
I really enjoy it, and I think that was one thing I was able to reflect in myself of why I'm enjoying it is because I'm like they all just really love each other, and that's so refreshing to read when we're dealing with a world that is not always so friendly.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I'm blushing. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. Yeah. I so the scene with Ivy and Carter, I think Ivy has always understood, like sort of always had the belief that Carter was hers a little
Mhm.
bit because he was her first, and like her first boyfriend and her first guy that, like, quote unquote claimed her in a certain way. um and so to have Carter admit and have Miri admit that they were together when they were out in California, I think just brought out this overwhelming possessiveness and jealousy a little bit in Ivy. But at the same time, she has been with Lex, and has been with Miri, and you know, can't really blame him for
Mhm.
loving Miri because she also loves Miri. And so
Mhm.
she needed to have her little meltdown moment. One of my favorite things about that scene is when Carter's like, "You're still my favorite girl." And I'm just like,
Yes, yes.
"Oh."
Yeah.
So yeah, and I agree with you that there's just not enough unconditional love, I would say,
Mhm.
in the world. And so one
Yeah.
of the reasons I think that we write and read romance in general is to be able to experience that even vicariously through fictional characters. I have a friend who has been in unicorn poly relationships, and it ended very badly. Just people are
Yeah.
people, you know, and
Yeah.
have different thoughts and feelings and emotions and reactions
Yeah.
to things. And so, and they've told me that, you know, reading the whole Midsummer series just healed that little piece of them that was so wounded by what happened, because it, you know, the four characters, as you say, really do love each other to such a high degree that it feels like they can overcome anything together. And I love that about them too.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. It's really enjoyable to read. And then naturally things get crazy and they're like, yeah, let's go back to Ireland. We need to figure this out. We can't live life like that, which to a degree I understand. In a imaginary world, I'd be like, what's the problem? Let's just all be
Yeah.
together
Yeah,
forever.
let's just have random fairy lust take us over
Right.
whenever it wants to. Who
Yeah.
cares?
So fine. So
No
fine. They
big
don't
deal.
have lives to live or anything. But very understandable in terms of the story. And now we do really get to see a lot more about the fairies and even entering into their realm. So I know we got a good little taste of it in book
Mhm.
one, but even seeing, you know, meeting to a degree the queen and then the king, what was it like creating all of that?
So much fun. I knew that we were going to have to go to the fairy world. There was only just a slight taste of fairies in Midsummer.
Yeah.
And so in the actual play itself, the fairies are very much a part of that world and a part of the hijinks, and a cause for a lot of what happens to our main characters. So I wanted to do them justice, I think. But I also didn't want to just take, like, lift and shift their names over. So we have Diana instead of Titania. There's also in the play, Titania gets blamed for a lot of what happens. And because there's this power like the king and the queen are sort of fighting over this changeling child, who is not even seen. If you're reading the stage directions in the play, the changeling child is not even seen on stage. So they're having this fight over this child who doesn't even have any agency over what happens to him. Becomes quite apparent that Oberon likely stole this human child from its family and brought it to the fairy realm, and intends to use it as, it's sort of inferred that he intends to use it as some sort of sex slave. And so it was very important to me that the king and the queen be very complex in their motivations. But I also wanted to bring in that changeling child, and I wanted to bring in that whole fight. The whole reason why everything has started is because we have this changeling child. But I also wanted that changeling child to have some sort of agency and to not have anything to do with being a sex slave. That was, I just didn't want to, that's not an area that I like exploring in fiction.
Fair.
And so
Yeah.
I didn't want to touch that. But I also wanted to make it a powerful child, give them an actual reason other than the king of the fairies being a gross, terrible person. Have them actually have a reason for fighting over it. And so it was a lot of fun to sort of to make that world and to have such a powerful fairy queen. I certainly don't want to piss off the fairies in real life by doing them an injustice
Right. Right.
in my fiction narrative of them.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, that was, I really wanted to, you know, play on those motivations and see how our characters would react to having gone to fairy and being there and experiencing the whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when they were getting information to kind of figure out how to get there in the first place, and what they're being told about, you know, the ring, that's the item that can like let them
Yeah,
get
the key.
there, and
Yeah.
how they're like they can be bloodthirsty and they just like to play, and you know, Ivy's the one that's like, well, we gotta go, and the rest are kind of like, like, are you sure we want to get into this? And I'm like, I love the confidence. I would be like immediately, no, like we're gonna
Yeah.
die.
Yeah.
And as they're like walking up there, hearing the voices of the dead and everything, and
Yeah.
that's, you do also, I think, a great job of balancing this kind of like super serious, terrifying situation, and then they get there and they're just like told to wait, and they're like, kind of hungry, kind of thirsty. Like, oh no, what are we gonna do in a tent for the night? And so you get this like lovely little break from all of the intensity as they all, you know, have fun together yet again. And then the next morning it's like, well, back to business. We need to
Yeah.
clean, and all of that. And that's where we get a little bit more about, you know, as meeting Poppy, and then, you know,
Mhm.
hiding and everything. And as they're running, we get the little bit around, Miri. And I think that was super interesting, and something that I
Mhm.
wasn't expecting at all was her, kind of involvement. And later on, we get that flashback of, the king basically saving her from the car wreck that her
Yeah.
parents died, and then being like, you owe me. And I'm like, that's not how that works.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming, it's going to cause pieces to move later on, so I
Mhm.
know that it was intentional, but just kind of, I guess, where, uh what were your thoughts as far as, kind of creating that involvement? Because I think as a reader, to me, I was super surprised, but
Mm.
that's just, I think sometimes people are really good at picking up on things, and then I'm just like going through it. I'm like, what? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that question. So, I knew that Miri was going to be one of the most powerful of them, right?
Ooh, okay.
Especially with her particular fairy gift.
Mhm,
I think being able to communicate with plants
mhm,
can be a really useful weapon,
mhm,
as we then see. We haven't gotten to that part yet, but um, I also, when you read the original play, a lot of the action takes place around Hermia. And everybody wants Hermia, and we need to get her married off. And, you know, both Demetrius and Lysander both want to marry Hermia. And I felt really bad for Helena. Like, she just sort of gets cast to the side. So, in this play, or in my adaptation of
mhm,
it, we have Miri as sort of my Helena character. And I really did want to give her more of a backbone, but then also make her more central to the plot.
mm,
And so the king's fixation on her specifically is going to come up later in
mhm.
books 3 and again in book 4.
Okay.
Um, but it draws into question this idea of, again, going back to what's real and what's fate. Is there such a thing as fate? Do
Mhm,
things happen because we're lucky? Do things happen because people make them happen? Or is there such a thing as destiny? And so Miri's parents dying was a catalyst for her to go live with her grandmother, which then became a catalyst for her to go to America in the first place, which is how she met Ivy, and then coming back and later met Lex and then met Carter.
mhm,
And so when we find out, spoiler alert, when we find out that the fairy king is the one that saved her from the wreck,
mhm,
right? It asks the question, is all of this really happening because the fairies made it happen? Or is all of this happening because of
mm,
fate? Is all of this
mhm,
happening, you know, what is the true nature of our lives? What are we really meant to be doing? And so some of that is things that they'll come to grips with as we move forward into the books. But I thought that was a
mhm,
fun little thing to play with she casually mentions it in Midsummer to Ivy. I knew in the beginning of each book, there are, well, at least in the beginning of books 1 and books 2, I have one scene or one pivotal moment that shapes the character.
Mm-hmm.
For Carter, it is when he gets that letter to go to the Royal Theatre Company in
Mm-hmm.
London. And he really wants to go, and he's, you know, his parents are worried about money and whether his dad is going to let him, and what are they going to do with the sisters. And so for him, being able to go to London sparks the whole journey. With Miri, it really is when her parents died. And so we start there with her, and now we find out why we start there with her,
Mm-hmm.
right? Is because the fairy king, at least for Miri up until this point, has been influencing her life in ways that she didn't even know was possible, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And then he makes her forget about it. And so then it's like, well, what sort of other memories am I not remembering? What
Mm-hmm.
other things could possibly have happened to me that have been influenced? Also begs the question, if the fairy king is trapped in fairy at the time, how did he get out to then go do that?
Right. Yeah.
And so more mysteries. I think J.J. Abrams compared writing a plot, and he was talking about screenplays, but I think it applies here, is that you have a pot, like a sort of like a Russian doll, and you open a box and you get one answer, but then you've got another box inside. So you pull that one out, you open it, you get one answer, and then there's another box inside, and so on and so forth, right? And so I think there's a lot of that element at play here, particularly when it comes to the fairy king and the fairy queen.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Because the minute you learn that Miri has recognized his voice, you're like, well, what could have happened? And then my brain's like going off on all these what ifs, you know?
Yeah.
So definitely fun. And then kind of as we're wrapping up the book, they've now gotten Poppy, and they have to figure out what to do with her. And they end up taking her to Russia. Lex has some family there that could care for her, and we also learn about her powers. In my notes I put like my baby fever, even though it's funny because it's not necessarily like baby fever, but something about seeing how much they love each other and then seeing them potentially as parents, I was like, oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, can you explain a little bit about that and kind of how Poppy affected their dynamic? Because I know it was, I believe it was Lex at first who was like, I don't really like, we can't be a part of it. And then Carter, having younger sisters, kind of takes the lead in making sure that she's comfortable and cared for and all of
that. Carter carrying Poppy out of Fairy was, in my mind, a mirror scene to Carter picking up his little sister Lizzie when she was little and was scared of a thunderstorm or something, and he picks her up and carries her back to bed. And so the minute that Carter becomes responsible for Poppy, it's Lizzie in his mind, right? It's his little sister. And so he's got to care for her. That's a core drive for him. And I think, you know, Ivy also being the eldest sibling of 3 younger siblings, there is that maternal instinct in her as well to want to care for it, but also being able to understand Lex's point of view. Lex is always going to be cruel. He's always going to be honest, even if it's cruel. And I think Lex would be the rational one in this situation and say, we can't bring a random child home from Ireland. Are you all losing your minds? Like, how are we going to explain this? You know, 3 of us live on the world stage, and Carter is this budding actor who is now reaping the fruits of publicity and what that's like for the first time. So she cannot come home. I think Lex plays a good game in terms of eventually warming to Poppy, but I do think that there's always going to be a part of him that is guarded towards strangers, even if she is in the body of a small child. All of them admit that there's something else going on with her, that she knows far more than she says or admits to knowing. And so with Miri, you know, I think of all of them, Miri is the most naturally maternal. I see her as being somebody who would just want a whole bunch of kids, like just a whole house full of kids. And I think that's probably because she lost her family so young, and, you know, she doesn't have any immediate family members other than her cousins and her grandparents. And so that dynamic was really fun to play with. Anytime there's conflict, it's always an interesting read. And so we're going to have, you know, Ivy sort of in this rock and this hard place, Carter and Lex completely opposed to what to do with this child. And Miri sort of stuck in the middle a little bit too, around like, I can see your point, but at the same time, like, she's just a baby. She's just a little girl. Russia was a convenient answer to what to do with her. In one version of Samhain, they took her to Carter's mom, and then that just I didn't see Carter or Lex putting his family at risk like that.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I thought Lex's shady uncle would be better suited to protect her against anything that would come her way or their way. I also thought that Lex's uncle would ask less questions, and that you know, Russians have a culture of supernatural and unexplained things in a way that is a lot older and a lot darker than Americans. And so Renee, even as witchy-woo-woo and sort of new agey as Renee is, I think she would have a lot more inquiry into why is this child, you know, so well spoken for being 6 years old or what have you. And meanwhile, Uncle Dimitri is just sort of like, okay, you know, like he's gonna go with it. Yeah, because of that. And so so yeah, that was a lot of fun having Lex and Carter have their little side quest, and their little snowy tryst was fun to write too. I particularly with Lex and Carter, I enjoy their switch in dynamic so often. Like Lex is not always the dominant partner in their relationship, and vice versa. You know, sometimes Lex needs to be held down and fucked, and you know, sometimes Carter needs that, so they go back and forth.
Yes, that was another fun one to see, because as you mentioned, I think traditionally it had been Lex being more dominant, and kind of like you're all mine energy is really fun energy. And then again, there's something very special about the two of them compared to like when they're with their girls, or just all together. They're, you know, when the two of them go, oh, again, they just love each other so much.
Yeah, it's very physical. I will say put a little pin in that until you get to book 3, because book 1 was really I'll say book 1 was really Ivy's book. It was really exploring her character arc and her dynamic and her psyche. Book 2 is really Carter's book. We get a really good sense of who he is, even though Miri has point of view and she does have a character arc. you know, if I was going to rewrite it and I could only pick one person's point of view, I would pick Carter's for that.
Yeah.
Book 3 is really Lex's book. And
Oh,
that's
okay.
when we see the relationship between Lex and Ivy really start to flourish in a way that that it didn't in the previous books. They start to
Ooh,
come to
okay.
grips with
Yeah.
what is between them, sort of what's always been between them,
Mhm.
and how they can be better teammates for each other as they really start to just come to the understanding that they're in this together and they're going to have to figure it out.
It's about time.
Yes.
I'm glad for them. Awesome. Okay. Very cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's exciting. Well, we are getting close to the end of Samhain. I You've done brilliant at me just having more questions on all the things, Poppy and the king and the queen and Miri's involvement in all of this and how they're going to solve this. Um, Walk us through the very end and the lovely little delightful cliffhanger
Yeah.
you leave for us.
Yeah. So, as I said, I wanted a changeling child that has her own agenda, that has her own rules.
Mhm.
You know, I think about the little boy in the play and I think, what did he want? You know, the king and the
Mhm.
queen are fighting over him. He probably just wanted to go home to his family, wherever that was. Did he want
Mhm.
to stay with the king? Did he want to stay with the queen? You know, what were his goals? And so when I brought the changeling in for my adaptation, I wanted her to have her own mind about what she wanted. She is not the little girl that you think that she is, and she is also not someone to um, just go with the flow. She's going to do what she wants to do. She's
Mhm.
very powerful. She can, again, spoiler alert, she can travel through space and she
Mhm.
can teleport wherever she wants to teleport. Um, and so at the very end, we see her with Lizzie. So at the beginning, you know, we have those mirror scenes again at the beginning. Um, Carter is watching the wedding happening on television. He gets a phone call from Miri, and then he hears on the television that Lex and Ivy are missing. At the very end, he gets a knock on the door. He opens the door, and Poppy is standing there with his little sister. She says, "I'm so sorry. I have to do this." And then she disappears with Lizzie.
Mhm.
So, you know what happens next? Stay tuned. Read book 3.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah, we sure will, because I obviously have to find out what happens. But overall, like I said, the timing worked out perfectly for the time of the year and the vibes and
yeah,
everything. And I am super excited to continue on the journey. Is
yeah.
there anything that maybe we kind of skipped over, or challenges or fun moments, favorite scenes or bits from the book that we didn't discuss?
There was something that you touched on that I wanted to bring up, or wanted to expand on. We were talking about um, going to fairy. Oh, the ghosts. Yes. Okay.
Oh,
So,
yes.
yeah, this was. So each one of the books was seasonal.
Mhm,
And of course, Midsummer has a lot of the Midsummer vibes with the fire festival and the
mhm,
drinking and all the
mhm,
sex. With Samhain, um, I knew that they were going to go back to Ireland and they needed to do it when the veil was thinnest, which means it's got to be on a high holy day, in this case, Samhain. And I really wanted to bring up that eeriness and that sense of our beloved dead is never
mhm,
really gone. Um, you know, there's a lot of that in Celtic mythology that people run away and go to live with the fairies. And, you know, if you hear a loved one in the woods, is it the loved one or is it the fairies trying to trick you? And where
mhm,
do people go when they die? And so I wanted there to really be a sense of, you know, the beloved dead to these characters still living on and still reaching out to them in some way. And so to bring into that eerie feeling, that Samhain-ness of the whole play, I wanted to play with the fairies, sort of calling them home to fairy using the people that they loved and lost in their lives. And so I really wanted to bring that in to our Samhain book.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's like I have mentioned before, you do a great job of setting the scene because they're in the woods, they're hearing these voices. All of a sudden, they're splitting up unintentionally as they're trying to investigate what is happening. So it definitely sets the tone for the season.
Yeah.
And can you give us a little teaser of what we're looking forward to? I know you've mentioned a little bit around book 3.
Yeah. So solstice is the long night. It is the longest night of the year, the darkest time of the year. And so expect book 3 to be the angstiest. Spoiler alert, the 4 of them are not together for the majority of the book. Not that they've broken up, they're just not physically together.
Yeah.
And so there's lots of angst. There's lots of, I was going to say heartbreak, but I don't know if that's really the right way to describe it. So when people have read all 4 books, they have said that book 3 was the most emotional gut punch because of that angst and the longing and the wanting to be together, but that was intentional. And if you look at the books, when I was designing the covers, all of them are kind of dark except for the third one. And the third one is very white. And I did that intentionally because not only is like the thought of winter and snow and all of that, but funeral robes only very recently started to be black. Once upon a time, if you were going to a funeral, you would wear all white. And so I wanted to play on that heartache, that sense of longing, that sense of, are things dying all around us, up in book 3. So just bring your tissues, guard yourself when you dive into it. Again, I will remind you and everybody, it is a romance. So by book 4, they are happy and living their lives and all together. So know that it gets there. But you're gonna be happy, but you're gonna be sad about it.
I love it. I am so ready for it. Like I said, getting into the winter vibes. I will curl up on my couch to the best of my ability with blankets if it's cool enough. But I'm looking forward to it. I am taking a break from the podcast for December, but to keep with the timeline, I would absolutely love to have you back on in January. So we'll just miss it just slightly.
That's totally fine, because then that will give us like not that much of a break to do Beltane the end of April or May or whenever you want to do
it. It's all worked out perfectly. So if anyone's watching and you're following along with the series, get that one ready. You have a few months. We'll keep going. But as always, it was super great to catch up and to chat about Samhain. And like I said, the timing just worked absolutely perfectly. So thank you for taking the time to join me. If you want to tell everyone real quick where they can find you, what you got going on. I know you mentioned you have a few different series and all that fun stuff.
Yeah. So you can find me on all the socials at the Jena Doyle. Look for my new motorcycle club, Witchy Supernatural. It's MMF, so Little Y Choose Action. And that comes out November 23rd. It's called Filthy Little Witch. And then, yes.
That's fun.
And then my short Heats and Holidays in the Royal Bastards Motorcycle Club comes out December 28th. And that's just going to be a quick, little amuse-bouche, 30, 40,000 words, somewhere around there.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jena. And we will see you back in a few months for sure.
Yes. Thank you so much. It's always lovely to talk to you. And I'm glad we got a chance to catch up.
Yeah, absolutely. If you've made it to this point in the episode, thank you so much for watching. I'd be incredibly grateful if you showed some support either by following or subscribing, depending on what platform you're watching on, and leaving a comment. You can always follow me on Instagram at Busy Reading Romantasy or on TikTok at busy.reading.romantasy to see what I'm up to. You can also email me at busyreadingromantasy@gmail.com to tell me your thoughts, dreams, secrets, or if you just have any book and author suggestions you'd love me to cover. Grab yourself a good book, get cozy. I'll see you next Wednesday for a new episode.